White Knuckle, a game where you get eviscerated, crushed, abducted, and impregnated by aliens. And yet, none of that matters, as you have but one goal: to climb up as quickly as humanly possible. With that in mind, you might be wondering which items will help you with that the most. Is it better to possess complete control over time itself, or have a green roach for breakfast? Hopefully I can answer that question for you today. Before we start, this tier list is for normal campaign only and is not applicable to endless modes, as those are very different. The tiers are as follows. Busted is for the best items in the game that are crucial to completing the game quickly. Solid is for items with very good effects that are nice to have but won't make or break your run. Noob tier is for items that will provide the most benefit to new and casual players, but will quickly lose their charm if you choose to transition into a more competitive style of play. For fun only is for items that are not even worth picking up. It's best to leave them where you found them, unless you want to mess around. Now then, what better item to start with than the good old hammer that you get at the very start of your run? The hammer is a core item that does many different things and will likely stay in your inventory until the very end of the game. But even though it does so much, how useful is it really? Hammer function number 1 is hammering pitons into walls to secure them. I will talk about this more once we get to pitons, but to spoiler you a little bit, you don't actually need the hammer to use pitons. So that's a fail. Function number 2 is using the hammer to break various destructible props across the facility. Think about wooden planks that block your passage or different supply crates that have items inside. Now, the planks can actually be pulled off by just using your bare hands, but the item crates do require the hammer to break them open, unless you're willing to sacrifice a rebar or a flare gun shot instead. Function number 3, and perhaps the main reason to keep the hammer, is self-defense against all kinds of creatures that roam the world of White Knuckle, but mainly bloodbugs and barnacles. Bloodbugs are fast and relentless enemies that spawn all over the place in the first half of the game and will likely account for a decent amount of your deaths. The hammer will kill them in 3 hits, which can actually be quite slow as a lot of items one-shot them. When it comes to barnacles though, the hammer is a must. You need it to escape their tongues in case they catch you, or to force them to retract their tongue on purpose to use them for mobility. Now, technically, you can escape their grasp by holding onto the tongue and spamming jumps repeatedly. This is not only a good way to gain some free altitude, but will also force them to let go once you get far enough. Still, you can't always rely on that, so the hammer remains a requirement to deal with them. Basically, the hammer exists to kill bloodbugs, smack barnacles, and open item boxes, although all of these things can be done without it. It's a good item that does its job well, but you can absolutely finish the game without it. Solid tier. Next, the brick. Yes, just a regular brick. You can throw it. How good can that be? The brick is the lowest tier item in the game, which can be purchased for just 1 roach or found on the ground almost anywhere, and that availability comes at a heavy price. The only thing you can do with the brick is throw it, and that has 2 effects, the primary one being the damage on impact. Bricks do enough damage to break wooden planks in 1 hit, but more importantly, they one-shot bloodbugs. While this is probably the best use case for bricks, bloodbugs can be quite hard to hit due to their fast movement, so the best way to do it is wait for them to get closer and smash their ugly heads at close range. Curiously, bricks also somehow do enough damage to send the thief monster running with just 1 hit, which can save you some flare gun ammo. Do not try doing this to turrets though, as they are stable enough to survive brick impacts. The second effect of brick throws is less obvious, but you can actually boost your jumps by throwing them underneath you. While brick boosting certainly sounds very cool, I would not recommend doing this, as even 2 of them are just barely enough to do certain easy jumps. So, taking all this into consideration, you might think that the brick is an underwhelming item that still has its place. However, the existence of rebar puts the final nail in the brick's coffin. Rebar is just as common, does everything better, and has other uses. As it stands, the bricks are simply not worth picking up unless you have literally no other items to work with. For fun only. Next, the humble piton. Just like the brick, the piton is a super low tier item that can be found all over the world or purchased with just one roach. And like the brick, it's kind of bad, although it does have a trick up its sleeve. The only way to use the pitons is to stick them into a wall, at which point they can be hit with a hammer 3 times to create a permanent handhold. Hitting them only 1 or 2 times gives you 3 or 6 seconds until they fall out, respectively. Now, using pitons like this is certainly very cool and immersive. Making your way up by driving countless pitons into walls makes you feel like an actual mountain climber, but unfortunately, going slow is just not an option in White Knuckle. So, if using pitons properly sucks, what else can you do? The important thing to remember here is that pitons stay in the wall even if you don't hammer them at all, and this can be used to your advantage. Grabbing an unhammered piton gives you half a second until it falls out. That doesn't sound like much, but with enough practice you can perform what's called a triple dyno in that short time window. This is hard, and I myself struggle to do it properly, but executing this technique allows you to use the piton to reach very high, very quickly. Is this worth learning for normal people? Absolutely not. Still, it does give the piton a higher skill ceiling, and you can always just do a normal jump from an unhammered piton if you don't care about fancy techniques. But despite these tricks, piton is made redundant by the existence of rebar, just like the brick. While you can learn to become a piton master, there is no real reason to, as rebar is just as plentiful and does the job with no effort required, for fun only. Next, Rebar, the Swiss Army knife of White Knuckle that can be used in almost any situation you find yourself in. It can be bought for 3 roaches, although it makes little sense, as it spawns everywhere. Rebar can only be thrown, although it has 2 firing modes, so to speak. A simple click will throw the rebar with a slight delay, while holding the button down will hold the rebar in a ready position, so it can be thrown instantly once you release the button. Now then, let's list everything the rebar can do. Number 1. Kill. It can kill. The rebar will shish kebab every enemy it touches, and unlike the brick, it pierces enemies, so you can potentially kill infinite blood bugs with one throw if your aim is on point. Like the brick, it will send the thief monster running with just one hit, but it will also completely obliterate turrets on impact, and get this, it can even damage the flying mass in the abyss. On average, 2 hits into its ugly face will force it out of the hunt mode back into its passive state. Use case number 2. If the rebar hits any part of the level geometry, it will embed itself into it. Basically, if you need an extra handhold anywhere, just throw a rebar and it will get stuck there permanently. Use case number 3. Rebar impacts will activate any buttons they hit. While definitely cool, this is only really useful in Interlude Ascent, where you have to press a series of buttons far away to activate the elevator. Use case number 4. Throwing rebar downwards while jumping will boost you upwards, and unlike the brick, it's a pretty significant boost. If you want to go beyond that, you can chain 2 throws together, and that will send you flying very far. While there are specific best spots to do this, rebar boosting is essentially useful everywhere as long as you have a rebar to spare. Don't think too much about this. If there is something above you that you can't quite reach, a rebar boost will get you there no problem. So having heard all this, you might think rebar is an awesome item, and it is. However, this tier list is about finishing the game quickly, and the rebar unfortunately becomes not very useful once you get better. It is an item that shines the brightest when you are a new or casual player, in which case you will be able to get a lot out of it. Once you start speedrunning though, you will often leave it on the ground. I'm sorry, but I have to put it on top of the noob tier. I hope you can forgive me. Before we get to the rebar variants, let's look at the ultimate evolution of the regular piton, the Auto-piton. It is considerably more rare and can only be found in very specific places or purchased for 3 roaches. The main improvement here is the fact that when you smack it into a wall, it fully secures itself automatically, so you don't need to worry about hammering it for safety. That's nice, but as I said before, you don't need to hammer regular pitons either to use them. There's also a mechanical difference between the two. You will always let go of regular pitons when inserting them into a wall, but with the Auto-piton, you can keep holding the mouse button to stay attached to it while it drills itself into geometry. It's not that useful, but can save your life in a pinch. However, by far the best and most fun feature of the Auto-piton is being able to use it as a weapon. If you swing it without actually embedding it into a wall, the swing itself does 3 times the damage of the hammer. This means that you can use it to destroy planks and kill blood bugs in just one swing. In fact, if you want to have some fun, you can completely replace your hammer with an Auto-piton. I don't recommend doing this when going for high score, as you will likely smack it into a wall or floor accidentally, but it's a fun challenge. Overall, while these improvements are nice, they are not enough to push the Auto-piton into relevancy when it comes to speedrunning. It's a cool item, but only really useful for casual players. Noob tier. Next, Rope Rebar, a less common rebar variant that doesn't spawn as often and can be bought for 5 roaches. Rope Rebar can do everything the normal rebar can, so all the things I said before still apply here. You can kill enemies with it, push buttons, and boost yourself when needed. The only difference is that when this item embeds itself into geometry, it drops a climbable rope. The rope is decently long and actually makes this item surprisingly useful for reaching high places. It's not the fastest way of doing so, as climbing the rope slows you down for some reason, but it's still a very safe and reliable way of getting anywhere you want. For all intents and purposes, this item is just an even more versatile rebar, which is awesome, and you will absolutely adore it when playing casually. When it comes to speedrunning though, it runs into the same issue as the regular rebar. It is simply not impactful enough to go out of your way to grab it. Still, the rope feature does make it significantly better than the regular rebar, so I think the bottom of the solid tier is a fair place for it. Next, Explosive Rebar. This thing is awesome. This is the rarest rebar variant that can only be found in very specific places or purchased for 6 roaches, and once you use it, you will understand why it's so rare. Just like the regular rebar, this one can be used to kill stuff, although kill is an understatement as it will absolutely annihilate everything it hits as it explodes on impact and deals damage in an area. Every enemy I mentioned so far gets owned by the rocket rebar, and yes, even the flying mass. A single missile strike to its ugly face will make it reconsider chasing you. Also, because it deals damage in an area, it can also be used to free yourself in case the vent monster grabs you. Throwing it at a surface close to you will damage the hand and force it to let go. Now, while exploding enemies is awesome, a far more practical use for this item is throwing it at your feet as you jump to give yourself a massive boost, which is enough to get you almost anywhere. If there is something really far or out of reach, or you just don't feel like playing a particular section of a level, a simple rocket jump will solve all your issues on top of being super fun to execute. However, the most valuable and perhaps the least known way to use the rocket rebar is to blow up the vending machines with it. Doing so will force them to drop a couple of items that were on sale for free. What this means is that if you get lucky and find a vendor that only sells really good items, you can convert your explosive rebar into 2 copies of that item, which can be very powerful. All in all, Explosive Rebar strikes that perfect balance of being both a really useful and a really fun item to use, and it is one of my favorites in White Knuckle. The only thing holding it back is just how hard it is to find, and the fact that it doesn't break the game like some other items. Top of the solid tier. Next, the flashlight. How do you even rank something like that? I guess I'll try. The flashlight is an item that you get at the middle point of the game, right before the pitch black service shaft. Its purpose is as simple as it gets. It provides you with light for areas where it's impossible to see normally. Unlike in other games, this flashlight isn't passive. You need to actively crank it every 10 seconds or so to keep it bright. So ideally, you want to put it in your pocket for quick access. I had a similar model when I was a kid, so this item is very nostalgic. So, how useful is it? Well, you straight up cannot see without it. It's hard to rank the flashlight because normally it does nothing. But in places like Service Shaft and Delta Lab vents, you cannot play without using it, as you would be wandering blindly in the dark. It's an item that exists for the sole purpose of making a few very specific places playable. I guess you can sell it too, but that's hardly worth considering. I will put it in solid tier as you cannot really play the game without it, but as soon as you pass all the dark areas, you might as well just drop it and never look back. While we are on the topic of light, let's look at the scanner. It's an item from the Parasite game mode that you can actually find in the regular campaign once you beat Parasite. Now, in that game mode, the scanner is insanely useful. In its primary mode, it always shows you the location of your objectives, as well as enemies and items. In its secondary mode, it acts as a passive flashlight, which is quite good, as that's the only source of light you have in Parasite. In the regular campaign, though, the scanner kind of suffers, to put it lightly. The first problem is obtaining it in the first place, as it only spawns in secrets. As if that wasn't bad enough, it only spawns in secrets that are out of the way and not worth visiting when playing for score. The other problem is its usefulness as an item. The primary radar mode will locate both enemies and items, which sounds great, but you can always either see or hear the enemies, so that's no good. Locating items sounds very useful until you realize that the range at which it picks up item signatures is very short, to the point where you have to know the exact item spawn locations to get any use out of it. And now it's secondary mode, the passive flashlight. You might think this item is at least worth picking up as a replacement for the flashlight, as you don't need to crank this one, but you would be wrong. The problem here is the fact that the regular flashlight will shine just as bright even if you put it back into your inventory, so you don't have to actually hold it in your hands. The scanner, though, it works great when you're holding it, but as soon as you put it away, all you get is this super weak light aura that's only barely enough to see what's right in front of you. The scanner is a really cool item both mechanically and visually, however it just doesn't work at all in the context of the normal campaign, especially considering how hard it is to find it in the first place. Bottom of the for fun only tier. Next we're getting to the fun stuff, the guns, or in this case the flare gun. You get the flare gun at the middle point of the campaign, same as the flashlight, although the gun can actually be obtained very early if you either find it in a vending machine or pick up the physics graduate perk. Now, the main intended use of the flare gun is to deal with the Teeth monster, as it is afraid of light, and it is pretty good at doing so, as Teeth will run if he gets hit directly or if he gets close to a burning flare. However, as I've already established, Teeth gets owned by everything, even bricks, so using flares on him is a bit wasteful. You can damage other enemies with direct hits as well, but I wouldn't recommend using it as a weapon in general, as the real point of the flare gun is rocket jumping. Just like with Rebar, firing the flare gun downwards while jumping will boost you. The boost is not as strong as the explosive Rebar, but also much better than the regular Rebar. It's a very nice, reliable way of getting to places just out of reach. One of the benefits of flare gun boosting is the fact that it can be reloaded very quickly, so it's especially great for situations where you need to boost yourself multiple times in quick succession. This is actually not that useful in Service Shaft, Haunted Pier, or Delta Labs, but once you get to the Abyss, you will be thankful for it. Rocket jumping across the Abyss with plenty of ammo in your inventory feels amazing, especially so if you have items that reduce your gravity, which we will get to. Overall, the flare gun is a very solid item that unfortunately doesn't get to shine until you get to the Abyss due to the level geometry of earlier locations. Still, being able to boost yourself repeatedly with almost no effort is super valuable in almost any situation. Top of the solid tier. While we are on the topic of guns, let's check out the Cryo-gun, which is only available in the Christmas-themed chimney mode. I know I said this tier list is for the main campaign, but bear with me for a second. So, what does the Cryo-gun do? Believe it or not, it does everything. But to begin with, it has two firing modes. Just clicking fires a regular ice crystal, while holding down the firing button charges the gun and fires a large crystal once you let go. It has a magazine capacity of 6 shots, although the charged big crystals consume 2 ammo instead of 1. To reload the gun, you either interact with the special rechargers, or if you're empty, you can hold down the fire button to slowly recharge a single shot into the magazine. The most direct application of the Cryo-gun is killing enemies. The small crystals do a lot of damage, which makes it extremely effective at killing blood bugs. There's nothing quite like exterminating them with your frozen Glock. The second way to use the Cryo-gun is to shoot the level geometry, like walls and ceilings. When small crystals impact terrain, they create permanent handholds, although those are slippery, so they will force you to let go after a few seconds. The big crystals create entire platforms on impact, which can be both grabbed or used to stand on. Now, in case it's not obvious, creating your own handholds and platforms with a semi-automatic weapon is pretty useful. However, the thing that pushes the Cryo-gun into insane territory is the fact that you can also boost yourself with it. And unlike other boosting methods, you don't even need to jump. Just fire at your feet and it will send you flying. These boosts are already powerful enough on their own, but you can also chain them by hugging a wall midair and shooting at it. If you ever practiced advanced rocket jumps in games like Team Fortress 2, that's what it is, essentially. As a cherry on top, you can combine the boosts together with its ability to create handholds by launching yourself in the air and then quickly creating a handhold to grab. That's why I said this gun does everything. Now, from what I've heard, the developers are not yet sure if they want to include the Cryo-gun in the main campaign. But just for fun, let's imagine it is available in the campaign in its current state, and rank it this way. So, if the Cryo-gun was obtainable and recharging it was relatively easy, it would likely be one of the best items in this entire game. You can kill anything with it, you can create handholds, platforms, and give yourself massive boosts by just shooting at your feet. Busted tier. Now onto the consumables, and what better item to start with than the basic can of beans. It is the most common item in White Knuckle, as it spawns in almost every level, with most having multiple spawn locations. Beans only do one thing. Upon use, they fully recharge your stamina, and leave a useless empty can in your hand. Now, I'm gonna say something crazy here, but I truly believe it. The can of beans has the highest skill floor and skill ceiling of all consumable items in White Knuckle. Let me elaborate. Regarding the skill floor, if you are a new or casual player who takes their time and goes slow, beans won't really do anything for you. Sure, you can refresh your stamina, but you could also just wait for it to regen passively, as you are in no hurry. It is only once you start going fast and constantly exhaust your hands that you will learn to appreciate beans. In absence of other stamina items, they will allow you to keep moving instead of standing around doing nothing. Now the skill ceiling. Using the beans normally is obviously very easy, but doing so while climbing quickly takes quite a bit of getting used to. You might have a free pocket to put them into, or you might not, in which case you will have to fish them out of your inventory. But the biggest problem is that this item requires you to drop the empty can after use. Again, this sounds simple, but doing this without interrupting your climb takes some finesse, especially considering that you can very easily drop the can into your own path and instantly grab it again on accident. However, if you learn to harness the power of beans, they will serve you well, especially if you can't find better stamina items or if you have stamina-hungry perks like Pulse Bladder. So in normal circumstances, beans go to solid tier. But if you have perks like Conditioned Polyphagia, Unstoppable Conviction, or Consumptive Reflex, beans go straight into busted tier, as those perks require you to grab every can you can find to function properly. Next, let's cover the Holy Trinity and start with the pills. Pills are a very rare item that can sometimes be found in the world or purchased for 5 roaches. This part of the Trinity takes care of your stamina. Upon usage, pills give you 2 buffs. One decreases stamina usage, while the other increases stamina regeneration, and they both last for 100 seconds, although the effect decays with time. What this means in practice is that consuming a bottle of pills gives you unlimited stamina for the first minute, and then acts as a very nice stamina buff for the last 40 seconds. This is, by far, the best stamina effect in the game, as it allows you to completely ignore the stamina mechanic for its duration. Is that good? Of course it is, but just like with the food, you need to be skilled enough in order to get maximum value out of this item. If your movement is on point, pills enable you to focus entirely on climbing and cover insane distances without ever stopping to rest. But here's the thing about pills. While their effect is amazing, it's not that amazing. Infinite stamina by itself doesn't make you go all that much faster. Technically, you can achieve almost the same result by finding a lot of food and using it as needed. In this game, speed boosts are a lot more valuable than stamina boosts, and unfortunately pills don't give you any of those. Still, this item is the king of stamina and a part of the Holy Trinity, so I think it deserves to be in low busted tier. Next, the Grub, a cute little fella that holds the secrets of speedrunning inside of its chunky body. It's a very rare item that only spawns in specific hidden locations and can be bought for 7 roaches. The Grub is a very simple item. Upon use, it allows you to grab any surface in this game for 10 seconds. That's it. Now, when you first start playing, grubs seem like a nice little bonus, giving you the ability to skip annoying sections of levels you can't figure out how to do properly or are too lazy to do so. However, at some point in your White Knuckle career, you will ask yourself a question: can't I just skip the entirety of this game if I can find enough grubs? And the answer to that question will be yes. Yes, you can. Welcome to speedrunning. At high levels of skill, White Knuckle gameplay hinges on just a few things, grubs being one of them. When combined with other buffs, grubs allow you to skip every single location in this game, the common targets being Interlude Ascent, Service Shaft, Haunted Pier, certain Delta Labs rooms, and the Expulsion Chute, that last one being the most important. The only place where grubs don't break the game is in the Abyss, as there is simply nothing to climb there. That gives you all the more reason to use all your grubs before you get to the Abyss. While this item does require you to both learn its spawn locations and be good enough at climbing to make the most out of its 10-second duration, the Grub breaks the game in a unique way that no other item can. Busted tier. And now the final piece of the Holy Trinity, and genuinely the best item in this entire game, the Injector. It's a rare item that can be purchased for 8 roaches or found in the world, and surprisingly, there are actually quite a lot of spawn locations for it. Upon usage, the Injector gives you a 35% jump height buff, as well as a 130% movement speed buff for 40 seconds, but the effect decays with time. Let's unpack this, shall we? As I've said in my perk tier list, jump height buffs are the most powerful effect in this entire game, as at high levels of play, your entire gameplay loop revolves around jumping, be it grounded jumps or climb jumps. 35%, while not super impressive on paper, gives you an incredible amount of vertical speed when you are repeatedly spamming jumps off of handholds. A single injector makes any location in this game a cakewalk, as long as you can keep jumping off of surfaces over and over again. Now, the movement speed. While this stat is not as important outside of the Abyss and maybe Pipeworks, you are still looking at an insane 130% bonus. This is what makes this item so uncontrollable for new players, as they are simply not used to moving at such speeds. And to be fair, the Injector is a hard item to get used to. Not only do you need to learn to handle breakneck speeds, but you also need to come up with new routes for each room to take full advantage of the Injector's effect. However, as soon as you do get used to it, there is not a single item like the Injector. This thing will absolutely carry you on its shoulders towards scores you haven't seen before. In fact, I kid you not, the main difference between the absolute best speedruns is the amount of injectors found during the run. The Injector is the king of items, and Metabolic Stasis is its queen. They exist in a league of their own, completely untouchable by other perks and items. Busted tier. Next, since we just covered an item that is the best in the game in practice, I think it would be funny to cover an item that is the best on paper. Say hello to Delta 0052, or Super Beans as I call them. Super Beans are the hardest consumable item to obtain, as it cannot be bought, only spawns in a very specific and tricky secret room in Delta Labs, or can be obtained by trading with a certain powerful entity. Upon use, Super Beans refresh your stamina, allow you to grab any surface just like the Grub, give you an additional mid-air jump, and reduce your gravity by 50%. All of these effects last for 30 seconds, and the gravity effect decays with time. While this item doesn't speed you up like the Injector, all these effects combined make for the strongest buff in this entire game. Only 30 seconds of it doesn't sound like much, but when used with an Injector, this item feels like playing with cheats enabled. But that's on paper. The sad reality of this item is that you will simply never get to use it when playing for high score. You remember when I said that it's the hardest item to obtain? Yeah, I wasn't lying. Option number 1, grabbing it in its secret room. Not only is this room not guaranteed to spawn in Delta Labs, but it also takes so long to get inside, grab it and then go back, that it never makes any sense to go for it, as the time loss will always be greater than the time saved by using it. Option number 2, trading for it. There are only 2 places where you can do this, one in the Abyss, and one that has a chance to appear in Pipeworks. The Pipeworks option sucks, as there is only a slight chance of that particular room appearing during your run. It's also quite expensive, but all that would have been fine, if not for a much bigger problem. When you speedrun, you don't visit Pipeworks at all, so that's not gonna work. Trading in the Abyss isn't any better. While you can absolutely bring enough items to trade for beans, there's a different problem. In Abyss, there is already a much better trade you want to make, and the entity is only willing to do one transaction. Basically, super beans are a very cool item that you will never get to use outside of casual runs, as getting it is a massive pain in the ass. For fun only. Next, let's look at something very simple, the humble granola bar. It's an item that can be bought for 6 roaches and is somewhat common in the first half of the game. At first glance, the granola seems like a simple upgrade to beans. This one also refreshes your stamina, but doesn't leave an empty can in your hands. But with time, you will start feeling like the granola makes you play better, and that's no coincidence. Using the granola also grants you an 8% jump bonus, 25% move speed bonus, and a buff to your stamina. All 3 of these effects persist for 66 seconds, but also decay with time. The jump and move speed buffs are small enough to not break the game, but they are nice, as any speed increases in this game are very welcome. What is a lot more noticeable is the stamina buff. Now, that bonus is not nearly as powerful as the buff from pills, but in practice, it's still enough to give you infinite stamina for 30 seconds or so. This item is basically a mix of pills and the Injector, albeit with a lesser effect. Now, you might call me crazy, but I think this item is better than pills for general use. Yes, the stamina effect is much weaker, but it's still good enough. And it provides you with jump and speed bonuses which are so valuable in White Knuckle. So even though the granola isn't a part of the Holy Trinity, I think it deserves to go into busted tier above the pills. Don't sleep on this item, as it just might be the difference between a good run and a terrible one. Next, another delicacy, the lemon roach. This one cannot be bought, and the only way to find it is to check the roach spawn locations, although sometimes they can run away and hide out of your sight. The lemon roach cannot be used as currency, but is instead edible, and upon consumption grants you 15% damage resistance, a 70% chance to not let go when damaged, and bonus damage for your hammer, which is enough to one-shot blood bugs. All of these effects last for 1 minute and decay with time. Now, these guys are very rare, and even when they do spawn, their AI often makes it hard to actually catch them. This basically means that you will only get to use this item every once in a while, so don't plan on getting it. But what about the effect? As you can probably tell, these buffs are no good for speedrunning, as they don't make you faster in any capacity. I guess you can save a few seconds by breaking wooden planks faster, but that's about it. Now, for casual players, this item does have some merit. If you happen to come across the lemon roach, it's worth keeping it in your inventory for places like Pipeworks, where extra hammer damage and damage resistance might make a difference. Still, because of the random nature of lemon roach spawns and the relatively minor buffs it provides, it's totally fine to just leave it on the ground, even if you're new to the game. Noob tier. Next, the Blink Eye, a very cool item that, unlike the others, isn't available to you straight away. To unlock it, you need to find and use it in the Lost Pier that only appears in endless modes, or trade for it like with Super Beans. Once unlocked, the eye can be purchased for 8 roaches, and that is the main way of obtaining it, as there are almost no spawns for it in the world. So, what does it do? The eye teleports you 15 meters in the direction you're looking, and has 3 charges until it runs out. Holding the mouse button charges the eye and shows you where you're going to end up, while releasing the button executes the teleport. I'm sure you have already guessed that teleporting is quite strong in a game about moving quickly, especially when it is as simple as pointing in the direction you need to go and getting there instantly. If you so desire, you can burn all the eye charges to simply get somewhere faster. That's totally fine, and this is in fact how I use it most of the time. But if you want to keep it for special occasions, you can use it to go straight through the fans in air exchange, which will save you quite a lot of time. Another use case is keeping them if you are afraid of getting kidnapped by vent monsters in Delta Labs. In case you get grabbed, a single teleport is enough to break free, and considering eyes have 3 charges, they will keep you safe. Now, there is a bit of a skill floor to using eyes on the move. Something you need to remember is the fact that teleporting preserves your momentum. So for example, if you are falling, it will be hard to save yourself with the eye as you will keep falling with the same speed after teleporting. On the other hand, this is great in places like the Abyss, as if you are already flying forward at high speeds, you can use the eye to boost yourself while preserving that speed. Basically, if you want to teleport with surgical precision, make sure you aren't moving. There is also a trick that allows you to use all 3 charges almost instantly, and I call it the machine gun teleporting. Normally, you will notice that each time you want to use the eye, you first need to charge it for a split second before you can actually teleport. However, if you keep clicking the button repeatedly after the first teleport, the eye will use all of its remaining charges with no delay. This is extremely useful for many different applications and definitely worth learning. Overall, while the eye can be hard to obtain and takes some time to get used to, it's an extremely versatile item that will help you in almost any situation you find yourself in. Top of the solid tier. Before we get to the artifacts, let's rapid fire some less relevant items to get them out of the way. Gold, platinum, and ruby roaches. You can find these guys across every level and deposit them at vending machines or computers to use them as currency. This is relevant early on, but if you are playing White Knuckle seriously, I assume you have the roach situation under control. Outside of that, they don't provide any value and aren't worth picking up, unless you have the profit motive perk. In that case, roaches are busted tier items, as the passive bonus is incredibly strong. Floppy disks, aka the saves of White Knuckle. You can buy them at interludes or find them across the world and then insert them into perk computers to make a save at that particular location. Saves are super important when you are a new player learning the game, as they allow you to practice certain areas without having to do the entire campaign again just to get to them in case you die. However, when you play for high score, saves become completely useless, as dying means the end of your run either way, no matter how many saves you might have. Noob tier. Hot chocolate, a consumable item specific to the chimney mode, and is unavailable in the normal campaign. It's quite rare as well, as you only get them at break rooms in between regions. The main use of this item is warming yourself to get rid of the freezing debuff. However, upon use, it also gives you 20% jump height, 15% move speed, and a slight stamina bonus for 40 seconds, decaying over time. What makes this item good is the relatively large jump height bonus, even if the duration is quite short. As I've said, jump buffs are very important in White Knuckle, and this item is one of the few ways to get it outside of perks. If this item was available in the campaign, it would probably be in low busted tier or high solid tier, although that would depend on its rarity. The last and probably least, the Inoculator, a consumable item exclusive to the Parasite mode. You remember how I said you get impregnated in White Knuckle? Well, that only happens if you let the Parasite-specific enemies damage you enough. They apply a permanent infection debuff on you, and once it's high enough, they can initiate a funny animation and kill you. And the Inoculator is the only way to heal that infection damage. So that's all great, but once you play Parasite a few times and figure out what to do, those enemies won't hit you ever again, as it's very easy to avoid them. Noob tier. And now we finally get to the most interesting items in the whole game, the mighty artifacts that you get right before entering the Abyss. While they are very cool, they are unfortunately also not made equal. First is the glove. You remember the spacesuit helmet in that one Delta Labs room with low gravity? Well, this is a piece of that same suit with a very similar effect. When equipped, holding down the mouse button activates the glove, which passively reduces your gravity by 50%, and while active, it also acts like a normal hand, allowing you to grab onto anything grabbable. The glove has a total capacity of 20 seconds, which recharges passively while it's not active. You should be careful and use it sparingly, as the glove cannot be activated again if its battery is below 50%. Ideally, you take it out during exact moments when you need the boost and put it back into your inventory when you don't need it. So what about the low gravity effect? On its own, in a vacuum, get it? In a vacuum? 'Cause it's a spacesuit? Kill me. It's a very solid effect, although nothing groundbreaking. It will definitely allow you to reach places you wouldn't otherwise, but the true power of the glove lies in its synergy with other items and perks. You see, low gravity is essentially a force multiplier for everything that launches you. Even a regular rebar boost will send you flying much higher, but now imagine you come to the abyss with injectors, a flare gun with plenty of ammo and perks that buff your jumps. Yeah. And considering that Abyss is at the very end of the game, you have plenty of time to gather everything you need. Basically, if you are already doing well, the glove will make your run even better, but if you have nothing, then it's still a very nice, solid buff. Now, considering just how much it boosts your other movement tools and how easy it is to use, the glove is most definitely the best artifact for normal campaign runs. Busted tier. Next, the remote. There is an anomalous TV in one of the Delta Labs rooms, so maybe that's where it comes from? Who knows? The remote is a very simple and safe artifact. It has 4 total charges indicated by green lights. Pressing the mouse button highlights an area you're looking at, and releasing the button creates a floating handhold at that location, using 1 charge. These handholds have quite a lot going on. When holding onto them, they massively reduce stamina drain, so you can essentially keep grabbing as long as you want. Once you do decide to jump off, they boost you in the direction of your jump, allowing you to go pretty far. The handholds are temporary and expire in 30 seconds, while it takes 20 seconds to recover a single charge. That means that, on paper, you can traverse infinite distance by just using the remote, although obviously that's not practical at all. There are essentially only 2 ways to use the remote. The easier one is to simply create single handholds nearby if you need to make a jump that you normally wouldn't make. Not very flashy, but reliable. The other, cooler way is to get to a high ground, jump forward, and then create 4 handholds in a row, jumping from one to another without stopping. This will allow you to cover a lot of distance, at the cost of putting the remote on a very long cooldown. And that's basically it. While the remote is safe and reliable, it's also not that impactful, at least when compared to something like the glove. It will help you in almost any situation, but its relatively minor effect and long cooldown hold it back. Solid tier. Next, the spear. No one knows where it came from, but this thing is badass. At first glance, the spear seems to be very unremarkable, as it is essentially a reusable rebar. You can throw it like a rebar, it kills things, sticks into terrain, and boosts you. The only difference is the fact that you can recall the spear back into your hands, Mjolnir style. However, the spear is an artifact with the highest skill floor and skill ceiling, and the more you practice with it, the more you will be able to get out of it. The key to the spear is abusing that recall ability. When you use it, you might notice that upon returning, the spear inflicts a lot of knockback in the direction it was traveling. This might seem annoying at first, as it will often push you in the wrong direction and kill you, but learning to harness that power will likely make the spear your favorite. Now, I'm not going to make a spear guide here, but if you want to try it, start by learning the basic vertical boost. To do it, execute a simple rebar boost while moving forward and looking straight at the floor, and then recall the spear immediately with the other hand. It has to be done with the other hand, as the primary hand goes on a short cooldown after throwing the spear. Doing multiple spear boosts is harder than it seems, as switching hands constantly can be quite challenging, on top of the fact that you have to constantly move the spear in and out of your inventory, as it is too big to fit into your pockets. Once you're comfortable with doing this, you can try doing horizontal boosts by throwing the spear at a slight angle behind you. I say try because these can be very tricky to execute, as getting the angle even slightly wrong will result in the spear pushing you down upon return. Getting the spear in the abyss also doesn't help the learning experience, as it is by far the hardest place to use it in. See, the spear is at its best when you can slam it into something quickly to then immediately recall it. In the abyss, however, it's quite easy to throw it into the void, and it's gonna take quite a while until it comes back. Now, here's the saddest part about all this. Even if you become the master of the spear, it's still not going to be as effective as the combination of the gravity glove and the busted perks and items, as those allow you to fly without ever touching the ground. In perkless modes though, the spear is an absolute beast that wipes the floor with other artifacts, as long as you know how to handle it. So overall, I think I will put the spear in the busted tier right below the glove. It's the king of perkless campaign, while the glove is the best in normal campaign. Next, the Timepiece. You remember the complete control over time itself that I promised at the beginning? Well, that's the item that does that, although it unfortunately is not as useful as it might seem. Functionally, the Timepiece is very simple. When you press and hold the mouse button, it rewinds your movement back in time. For each second of use, it rewinds 2 seconds of your movement and has a total capacity of 30 seconds of use. Once those are exhausted, it becomes completely useless. The most obvious and primary use of the Timepiece is to save yourself whenever you make mistakes. Every time you miss a jump, fall off a ledge, slip, or stumble, just whip out the watch and hold down the mouse button, and it will get you back to safety in no time. Considering that the Abyss is the hardest region to learn and get used to due to the fact that falling means certain death, the Timepiece is perhaps the best artifact you can get while you're still learning the place. And that is unfortunately the best use case for the watch. It is at its best when used by new or casual players as a safety net to prevent themselves from dying. Did you expect something more? Okay, there is more, but it's not very good. Because the watch rewinds 2 seconds of movement with each second of use, it is technically possible to use it to boost yourself. And I'm sure you're already imagining all the crazy potential scenarios, but the reality of using the Timepiece for movement is very disappointing. First, you can technically use it on its own to make jumps. For example, this is one of the simple jumps you need to make at the beginning of the Abyss. All other artifacts can clear this with ease. Hell, you can even make this jump with just a rebar. But with the Timepiece, it takes perfect timing and movement to make it across with only 2 rewinds. If you don't nail it perfectly, it will take at least 4 rewinds instead, which is super slow compared to using any other item. On the topic of other items, the only cool combo you can do with the watch is the Blink Eye boost. If you find a spot with correct geometry and have a spare blink eye, you can teleport backwards and then immediately click the Timepiece to slingshot yourself forward, which actually gives you a substantial boost. Thing is, to do this, you need to have a blink eye in the first place, you need the level geometry to cooperate with you, and you need to be stationary. That's an issue because you should never be stationary in the Abyss, and instead be flying under the effects of injectors and busted perks. If you are, using the blink eye this way just doesn't make any sense, as you can instead use them normally to boost yourself forward and preserve momentum, which is also a lot easier to do. Now, I truly hope that there are other, better players who will eventually figure out how to do something useful with the Timepiece. But as it stands right now, it is nothing more than a cool toy for new and casual players. Noob tier. And finally, the Translocator. If the spear is a reusable rebar, then the Translocator is a reusable blink eye, although unfortunately also nowhere near as good. This artifact functions exactly the same as the regular blink eye. Holding the button charges it, while releasing the button teleports you to the chosen location, although the Translocator's teleport is 5 meters longer. Whereas blink eyes have 3 charges until they run out, this item only has 1 charge, which goes on a 20-second cooldown before you can use it again. This is not great. When talking about Abyss specifically, the best part of Blink Eyes is being able to machine gun all 3 charges rapidly to traverse huge distances, which is very valuable considering the vast open spaces of the Abyss. The Translocator cannot do that. No matter what, it is at best a single teleport every 20 seconds, which is, while helpful, is nowhere near the power level of something like the glove, the spear, or even the remote. Thing is, the Translocator can be good as it has a quirk that I haven't mentioned. It can telefrag. Now, for all of you new gens, telefragging is teleporting inside an enemy, which kills them instantly and recharges the Translocator. Basically, if given enough enemies that are relatively easy to hit, you can chain an infinite amount of teleports by telefragging them. But here's the issue, there's almost nothing to telefrag in the Abyss, save for a few barnacles at the end. This item is basically a hostage of the only level you can use it in. It has a quirk that could make it great, but there is simply no way of actually putting it to use in the current campaign. I hope the Nest update will finally allow it to shine. Low solid tier. And there you have it, the final item tier list. This is obviously my opinion, and I fully expect you to disagree with some of these placements. In fact, if you want to express your own opinion, there is a Google form that the developers are very interested in. If you play White Knuckle and follow the link that I will provide below the video, you can rank all the items yourself, and all the data will go to the developers. Now, if you just want to talk about Wuckle, play Wuckle, and be a Wuckler, then you're welcome to join my new Discord. It's a work in progress, but I'm sure we can make something out of it together. So that will be all for today. Thank you very much for watching until the end, and I will catch you in the next video.